Hey everyone, it's Ali from Divine Miss Ruby Designs, and I thought it's been a while since I've done an editing video, so I'm going to edit one of the twins from the session the other day that I haven't worked on yet. So here's one of the images. So I've posted one that's on the green foliage backdrop, and it's all artificial leaves, by the way, and basically this one's just on a brown. We did this one first, and then I thought, oh, well, we'll do another. So while I'm in Lightroom, I just want to lighten up this section over here a little bit. So I'm actually going to use a gradient. I just want to increase it a little bit. And I'll probably just bring the highlights back a little bit so the babies aren't too bright. And then I'm just going to go in and use the exposure tool just to try and brighten up that mat a little bit. Curly felt underneath. As you know, I edit fairly dark anyway, so there'll be a lot of depths to this anyway. Okay, I'm happy with that. So the first thing I do in Lightroom or ACR when I'm bringing into Photoshop is I reduce the highlights and the whites back, and I reduce the contrast, so I've got a nice even place to start. And sometimes I'll just adjust the shadows a little bit. So I'm happy with that, so I'm going to flick it into Photoshop now. And yes, I'm not using my tablet at the moment because I moved my office and I just haven't set it back up. And I'm not 100% confident yet to show you. Okay, so the first thing, I'm going to just fix a few imperfections on the image. As you can see over here, I have these. They're not creases, but my floor is real wood, so my backdrops always take on the groove and the texture of the floor. So when I roll my backdrops back, within an hour or so, they're falling out. They're not there permanently. So I'm just going to get rid of that. So sometimes I just use a spot healing tool brush, and I'll just do little sections just to try and eliminate those obvious lines. You could clone it, but I just find this way sometimes it normally is a bit quicker. Clearly not today. It tends to clone around it anyway. It's just using Content Aware to do it. Takes a little bit longer when I'm streaming for everything because of the video lag. So I'll just do a little bit of a plug. So this backdrop that I use on pretty much every session is called Hide. It's a 2x3 meter backdrop, and I just find they're really versatile because I can use them for family portraits as well as newborns and sitters and whatnot. So I have two brackets set up so I can lower it when I want to use it as a wall and a floor for this kind of example. The little bed is by Drops and Props, and Drops and Props have just done a pre-order on these for their big shipment that's coming in, and they are, sorry, I'm getting messages, I should have turned them off, and they have sold out of the first shipment. So Jamie didn't have enough for a full 100 in the first shipment, so she's going to order some more for the second one. I believe she's going to try anyway. But it's like a great little bed. It's not too big. It fits one baby perfectly. It fits two little babies perfectly. It looks great on the side, tushy up. It's great for sitters to sit on. It's really sturdy. It's not, you know, they're really, really well made. And they're great for little boys. I mean, I do use them for girls too, but they're great for little boys, just because they've got that rustic type nature. The curly felt is made by me, or Tracy, Divine Miss Ruby Designs, and these mats are made by both the blanket and the mat, I believe, is Quitchiku, which is in Wales, and I just love it. Just something different. The wrap's one of ours as well. Alright, I'm going to take a photo. So we've got rid of those obvious lines now. So it's just a little bit easier. Now the angle is a little bit annoying. So what I do here is I create a second layer, and then using my move tool and the control key is, command key rather, is I just straighten it up a little bit. Just so it's not too too crooked. I'll crop part of this anyway, so I'm not too worried about it. So it's a little bit better perspective. I'll just fix this one over here. Okay, I have changed a little bit on how I edit, just slightly. I still use all the same action sets. I just use a few different little bits and pieces here and then. So I'm using portraiture a little bit more now, just because I find it a little bit quicker for some things. I'm just going to centre them a bit better. Make sure my top and bottoms are roughly even. Oh, I was on a web preset, I'll fix that. Try again. Okay, so I'm happy with how that kind of looks at the moment. I'm just going to go in and very slightly liquefy down the bottom here. So just this little blanket, I'm just going to pull back up a little bit. On one of the other ones I edited, it was quite bulgy. Another really, really good tip when you are editing is when you're photographing. I'm just going to pull this out a little bit too. Back down. Another good tip is if you're doing a bed setup or like the sleepy time type pose, and you've got a baby under there and you don't want them to kind of look bony and skinny, I just put a doubled over cloth nappy over the top and tuck it in really firm too. It holds baby there, and then I put my piece over. So you've just got a much smoother finish, and I just find it, well, it makes it easier when you're post-processing, put it that way. Alright, I'm going to go back in and just liquefy this long curl because it's annoying me. I'm just going to bring it just in a little bit more. So for those who don't use liquefy, all it is you're just pushing pixels around. It's going to be fairly blurred, so I'm not too worried about it being not perfect. So I'm just using the bloat tool just to try and maybe make them meet a little bit more. So it's not quite so much gap. Alright, so it's just brought in a little bit so it's not too daggy hanging out there. Alright, so my first thing is always the skin. I'll just collapse these two layers. Okay, so Bubby number one has got, he's a little bit pimply. He's just not too bad. They've both got a little bit of spots. I'm not going to I'm not going to go to the extent this time of using frequency separation because it's not that bad, but I have found that the spot healing tool, when used correctly, can sometimes just be that really quick fix. And then when I use portraiture, it kind of smooths everything out anyway. But frequency separation would be good on this. If that was a close-up shot, I probably would do it, but because it's a bit of a distant shot, I'm not going to. Just want to clean up those very obvious little bumps. And when I run the reduce reds, it will, you know, kind of fix a lot of this cheek colour. This little guy was pretty good. This isn't probably, I have to stand on a ladder to do these shots, and I'm a little bit wobbly, so it's probably not the sharpest of my images, but it's not too bad either. Certainly not perfect, but it's a lot better than what it was. So I'll have a look. Okay, so before I even start my editing process, I now, because I've changed slightly and I'm now using portraiture a little bit more, I'm going to fix the skin colour and I'm going to fix the shadows and stuff, and then that way it'll be a much nicer edit. So the first thing I'm going to do is, I might just turn the sound down on that, is I'm going to actually, little Bubby here, this guy's got nice olive skin, this guy's a bit red, so I'm going to correct the blues, which will warm him up a little bit more. But of course we're not going to leave him quite that yellow. So I always use the sliders. So I'll take about 50% fill. It's just warmed him up just a tad without him looking too yellow. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is do a new layer. Soft light, fill with 50% grey. And then I'm going to work on my shadows on their faces. So obviously we know which side the shadows were, because you could tell when I adjusted from the Lightroom when it was quite dark towards the right, which is fine because that's how I have my lighting set up and that's how I prefer it. So there's, everyone does what's best for them, and I don't believe there's any right or wrong way of doing this. There's certainly better ways of doing things, but I think the shadow is really important in your images to give it depth, whereas if if they tend to be very flat and all one tone and no shadow, it tends to be not boring, but yeah, just is, I don't know, shadows create interest, but as you know, I like shadow. I'm just doing some of the bed where it might be a little bit bright. So I'm going to show you, so you can see I have darkened it a little bit, but it's not too overdone. I'm just going to take the fill back a little bit. Okay, so they're there, but they're not too heavy. Oh, I'll just go back to there. I'm just going to lighten a little bit the highlights, just so that their nose and that's not glowing. Okay, now I'm happy with that. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do, and I normally do this at the end, is to increase a bit of warmth into my shadows. So this can vary how I do this. So sometimes it's 5 in the reds, in the shadows, and then sometimes I just pull back on the cyan in the highlights and go a little bit. I like it warm in the shadows. And sometimes it really is very, very subtle. It's not necessarily a big change, but it does make a difference. You know, it'll take away a green hue or whatever. Okay, so, and these bulbs will get brightened up a little bit. I'm going to take out some of the skin reds. And of course I take my sliders back because I think baby skin needs to have some reds. So normally it's about half and half, depending on the image. So we'll take another picture of that. So so far we've gone from that to that. So we're very subtle. We're just doing kind of the touch-up stuff at the moment. Alright, so now I'm going to run portraiture, and I'm by no means at all an expert at this. So I'm going to create a second layer. Now I mentored with Beck Schultz the other day, and she uses portraiture a bit more than me. I only bought it about a month ago and I haven't really played with it. So I create a second layer so that I can mask off around the eyes. Now I just have it set on the normal setting. You'll notice it affects a few parts of your image, not just the skin tones. So it's softened the backdrop a bit, which is okay, that doesn't bother me. So all I'm going to do now is zoom in a bit, and with a black brush, just take off around the eyes at 100%, and take off around the lips. And personally I don't like soft hair, but I don't like over sharpened hair. And I'm probably just going to take it off the bed as well, just because, you know, I don't want it to look non-rustic. And if you wanted to, you could take it off other things if it really bothered you, but I'm going to leave it as that. Okay, I've left the backdrop because that doesn't bother me. I would fade that out a bit anyway. Okay, so my next part of my process, which is my normal part, is to add some contrast. And obviously that is way too much. So I'm going to take my fill back to about 50%, somewhere around there. And then I'm going to mask off certain areas. So I want to mask off on that matte because it's obviously picks up the deep stuff very, very quickly, as well as the bed. And if you wanted to, you could take back part of their face as well, just slightly. So it's still got a little bit more punch there. The next thing I do is vignette. So I like to vignette close, and that's how I get that really deep type look. Because I want it to pull into the image. I'm using hand gestures that of course you can't see. So it's a bit kind of stops here. So I'm going to just click on my mask layer, go to my brush on a white brush, and about 40% is good, and just bring it in those, I might just take it back a little bit, and just fix those areas where it doesn't quite look even. You don't want to go too heavy because darken this side up to match the other one a little bit more. Yeah, you don't want to go too heavy. Okay, the next thing I do is blur the edges, which will fix all these little imperfections here. So this time I'm going to go a little bit closer, more into the bed, and then I'll mask off. far too much. So I normally take it 50% opacity and 50% fill. And we'll just mask off. Just to make sure none of the babies or that area is soft. Okay, so now I run my soft warm action, which lightens everything up again, and I change the slider on the opacity to 25% and bring the other one back to about 15. And this image will probably get warmed up again. And now my process is now to go and darken. So I don't mind how dark that is. I'll probably clone some of this because it is annoying me now. But what I will do is I'll mask off their faces ever so slightly, so I'll probably bring it back to about 30%. Just lighten this section up a little bit. But everyone edits differently, but I edit deep, as you know. Okay, so I'm going to go and sharpen from here. So using the right brush at 100%, and then I'll take it back. Try and pick up any eyelashes, and I'll take it back to about 80, 75, 80. And then on the clarify, you have to be a little bit more careful with this one. With a really small brush, all I'm going to do is extend and cover over that eye line. Just kind of just darkens it a little bit. Just gives a little bit more definition. And I'll do that a little bit around the lips too. And depending how subtle that is, I'll leave that at that. So I've got a little bit of blue around his eyes, so I'm going to go up and correct the blues now. And obviously I'm not going to leave them like that. Just a little bit on his lip. He's a little bit blue on his chin. A little bit on his upper lip. So I would bring that back to about 30, and I'd take my fill back to about 50. It's warmed it up a little bit. Just play with it without looking too... If it really bothers you, you can just paint at a low opacity. I'll show you. One of the lighter top colours. With a soft brush. Just to kind of even it out a little bit. But naturally babies are darker when they're asleep. Their eyes are darker. Sorry, Ben's waking up. And I'll play with the opacity on this in a second. So that's just, see that was a bit dark, and now they're just a little bit more even. Little Benny's sick again, poor little bubba. I am going to clone over here, even though I probably will vignette again. Just to make it less obvious. Okay, so where am I at? Let's fix that obvious spot there. I might slightly darken again. And then I go into image adjustment, into exposure, and this is where I create my matte effect. So that's what it was, and that's what it is. Just going to go back into colour balance. Actually, I'll create another layer and go in colour balance, and I'm just going to increase those shadows again because they're looking a little grey. No, we'll can that. Just increase the contrast a bit more. Let's give it a little bit more definition. And I'll probably just warm them up now. And I always slide that back half and half as well. It's just a very subtle warmth, but it certainly does warm them up. Now if you wanted to, you could go in and finish with something else. There is a good action that I have of Erin's. Where is it? Matte vignette, which is what Beck showed me the other day, because I haven't really used many of those. But I would pull that back so it's less square. And done. So I've gone from, go back to where we kind of cropped it, from that to that. A lot more depth, and really makes the babies more of a focus. And you can tell that I overexpose slightly. There's more information in your highlights than there is in your blacks. So I always encourage people to shoot half a stop or a stop over. Obviously no more than that. You don't want them blown out because it's hard to recover, but if they're just that little bit over, it's easy to bring back. So and then I've got a good base to work with, because I don't want my curly felt part of the feature. Okay, and the other thing, if you struggle with colour, try and keep a little bit of monochromatic stuff going. So if you're not sure about your backdrop, like this probably could work okay. Well, it worked okay on the green foliage backdrop. I'll just bring that one in and show you. When it wants to load, of course. So I just did 2 varieties, which was really easy because when the babies are in there, you just pick the bed up. So this is actual artificial leaf matting. I probably will photograph it and we'll print it off as a backdrop at some point to make it easier. These guys are a little bit brighter in this, which is okay. But it gives 2 totally different looks, and we just added the little toy. So, you know, just, and their arms are out a little bit more, and yeah, just really easy. It was a simple setup. I just threw the mats over the top of my brown, actually over the top of the curly felt and everything, and we had a totally different look. So you could do that with a pattern backdrop, or a wood floor or anything, so you can get a couple of different looks, or you could add some bonnets onto them. We decided not to because it would have looked a little bit too busy. We did have some aside, but I think they wouldn't have been my picks for images to pick. So yeah, so I think, you know, if you wanted to give their little cheeks a little bit more colour, which I might after we finish, just use the little rosy cheeks or whatever it is, action in the Kelly Brown set and put it on the lips, and just really low, so it just gives them a little bit more colour in their face. But that's pretty much it. Thanks for watching.